All right. Let's we're gonna pull up. We're gonna pull up the pictures I was talking about doing the creative. Everybody, we missing somebody? Okay. We're gonna pull up these pictures and then we're gonna, if y'all want to, y'all can go ahead and you can go ahead and pull your cameras out, because after I go through these pictures here, we're gonna give you a chance to do a little hands-on and see who been practicing since the last time. Who been practicing what we learned last time? You been practicing? You been practicing? Okay. Y'all been practicing for real. Y'all trying to make me feel good. Y'all been practicing for real. We good. We good. Okay. Let's get into like the shutter speed. Using the shutter speed creatively is typically gonna give you the opportunity to freeze motion or exaggerate the motion. And what I mean by that is, like, for this right here, this was like last year sometime when we had a supermoon, right? And the clouds were moving. And so, as you can see with the settings that I shot with, I shot it at 1/5 of a second so that I can show the clouds, like show that they're actually kind of moving. They look like they're moving a little bit, but if you really want to exaggerate it or accentuate it, should I say, this is what that same shot look. Now, mind you, with shutter speed, if you're doing long exposure, they call this a long exposure. You need a tripod. You can't do this handheld. You need a tripod for this. And these are long exposures, what I'm talking about here. This is that same shot, but it's at 25 seconds. And like the clouds, you can really see the clouds are like moving. They like streaking through. And you get, that's controlled by the shutter speed. And that's what they call a long exposure. And say again? I said it made it look day instead of night. Yeah, because I let a lot more light in. And if you see, there's no exact reason why I use the settings. When you're doing long exposures, you need the knowledge of being able to know how it's gonna affect the other ones to adjust your settings to get the look that you want. There's no hard and fast number that you can do. Long exposures are trial and error. You go out there, you shoot one, if it look like you want, you good. If it don't look like you want, adjust your settings. Because if you see that one there, I shot that at ISO 400, f5.6. And I shot this one here at ISO 3200 at 2.8. Because the shutter wasn't staying open. That's a slow shutter, but it's not staying open because it's pitch dark outside. Ain't nothing on except my neighbor's porch light. And if you look here, all of that's coming from my neighbor's porch light. All that light in the trees right over here, that's my neighbor that stayed behind me. All that's coming from his porch light, but the shutter staying open so long that all of that light is seeping in. And matter of fact, if you look right here, I'm getting a lens flare from the moon. That little circle right there, that's a lens flare because the light from the moon is going directly into the lens. So, and typically the moon ain't gonna give you a lens flare. So to get that streaking motion, that's called a long exposure, and that's created by slowing down your shutter speed. Most cameras, I ain't gonna say most, my cameras, I can get up to 30 seconds. That's the longest I can leave my shutter open on my cameras. You just have to check it, just keep rolling it until it stops, so you'll know how long you can keep yours open. Another example of that would be like when you wanna, this another long exposure example. I did this at 1/5 of a second. I don't have the ISO up there because I'm just focusing on the shutter speed. If you look at the water, you can see that the water, it looks like it's like kind of moving. It look kind of, kind of glistening looking because that's 1/5 of a second and it's kind of showing that blurred motion. If I sped that up, the water still would look kind of glistening, but it'll look more frozen. It'll look more crisp, right? But if you want to make that water look like it's almost ice, slow the shutter down to 10 seconds, and it almost look like it's frozen because the water's moving, so all that motion is blurred. If you slow it down even more, it's gonna look even more blurred, like you can't even really see the ripples anymore. because the shutter is staying open so long and it's showing all of that motion blur. This is the point when you want the motion blur, when you're doing long exposures, because you want the motion blur. Or like I was saying, when you downtown and you want to shoot that water fountain and you want to see those, if you're shooting the daytime and you're shooting the subject, you don't want to slow it down too slow, because the person just moving a little gonna make them blur. But you slowing your shutter speed down is gonna make that water look like it's flowing instead of being little dots. When you take the picture, it won't look like little dots, it'll look like it's flowing. And that's all controlled by your shutter speed. And that's how you start to use your shutter speed for creative purposes. And one other thing I want to say with the shutter speed before we go in, remember these little stars right here. We're going to come back to that. See the little star right there? Remember that. We're going to come back to that. And this one here, I stuck this in here. I really wasn't going to say nothing about it because this requires off-camera a flash. But if you have a flash on your camera, you can still do it. But I call this a shutter drag. I don't know if it's a real thing, but I call this a shutter drag where I set my flash to a really, really short flash, just say maybe 1/32 or 1/64 on my flash. This is a little bit more advanced, but I set my flash to a really short flash. And what that really short flash did was freeze the bride. It made her, and then I put my shutter really slow. I think it was 1/10 of a second or 1/5 of a second. And when as soon as I clicked it, I jerked my camera. I clicked it and jerked it. And so the flash froze the bride, and the flash only hit the bride with them people close to her, but it didn't hit those lights in the back. That's why those lights look like it's streaking. And if you ever shoot in a dance floor scene and you want to make it look like the party jumping, just try that. Just try that. Just make it look. She look like she doing something up there right now. And I call that a shutter drag, where you slow the shutter down. You have a flash on there. It's got to be a short flash. You can't put it on 1/1 or 1/2. That flash not gonna be fast enough. It's got to be really short, 1/64 or 1/128 of a second on the flash. When you shoot, as soon as you press it, just click them, or you can try it with your lens. If you got a zoom lens, you click it and zoom it real quick. It's got to be a quick motion. And when you slow it down, let me see, slow it down. I'm slow it down to 1/10 of a second like that. And then you got to be it got to be like that. And you heard how it was slow. And if you look at that picture, let me show you what it looked like since we don't have a flash on there. And the reason why I really wasn't gonna talk about that one, but I just want to show it because it's a little bit more advanced. It's a little bit more advanced because it's getting into off-camera flash and stuff like that. See how it look? Because there's no flash there to freeze anybody. With the flash there, whatever the flash hits will be frozen, and then everything else will be blurred. Because the flash is freezing the motion, and then you're moving the camera. And then, y'all get your cameras ready now. We about to do it now. Y'all ready? Okay. Remember I told you about the stars. What those stars are, if you can see them a little here, right? What those stars are, and you really only want to do, unless you just want them all over your picture, this would be something that you would use for, if you only had one light source in there and you wanted to give it a little star cluster look. You don't have to use Photoshop to do that. You can do it right in your camera. And the way you do it is by raising your aperture. Take your aperture, the higher you take your aperture, the more defined that little star cluster is going to get. Because you see him shooting at f4, right? And then you notice the water, I'm a little over, I'm almost at a half a second. That's 4/10 of a second. That's really slow. I got it on the tripod right now. That's really slow, and you can still see like motion in the water. Look at the little ducks now. And I ain't even noticed the ducks. The water was like moving kind of fast that night. So, but you can still see the motion. Now, when I raised that aperture up to f22, you see how defined the stars are, and what those stars are. It's the aperture are blades. So when they open up, a little bit of light is showing through the separations. And you can tell how many blades your lens has if you count those little lines. If you got 9 blades in your aperture, it'll be 18 little lines. If you got 4 blades in your aperture, it'll be 8 little lines. Like however many blades you got, the star cluster gonna have double that amount, because it's, one in between each one. It'll be double that amount. But that's how you get, and see, there you go, 10 seconds again, like I could have used these pictures to do both of them. Because if you look at the water, I'm at 10 seconds, and it's, the motion blur is like exaggerated compared to that of like 0.4 of a second. It's like less than half a second, and then that's 10 whole seconds on the water. And then again, with the aperture, with the star clusters at f4, you can start to see them, because those, it's really dark out there, so the light is like really pronounced. And it's because I'm telling you, I was scared. I was down there by that water. I was looking for an alligator or a wildebeest or something to come get. A guy pulled up on a canoe and scared me half to death. He came down to Chattahoochee on a canoe. I thought it was an alligator. Boy, we got somewhere. But matter of fact, I was on the phone with my wife. I'm like, that man just scared me out of death. But it's like really dark down there. So it's like the lights are really pronounced. So that's why you can start to see it a little more, even at f4, but it's really defined at f22. And that's how you can go ahead.
Are you across the water on the Phoenix City side shooting over?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. When you go, and you probably could see it a little bit better on what other picture at? Shutter speed. This is, where they built that new zip line when you go on the Phoenix City side, and then when you go on the Phoenix City side and turn by like where the amphitheater is, when you get out, before you go over that bridge, just go to the right and go down a little sidewalk. And when you get to the bottom, it's like a lot of people go down there with their little boats and get in the water right there. When you go down the sidewalk, it take you all the way around. You can walk down to the water. You can walk all the way in the water. And it's like, yeah, but I was standing like right on, because you can see the rocks right here. I'm standing like right next to the water. And the duck scared me one time. The man, and Buddy came up the river right here and came with a look, man, I almost got somewhere. But that's how you use them for creative purposes. It's a lot more you can do with it, but those just some examples of if you want to get like exaggerated motion blur, you want to do long exposures, but you're going to need a tripod. If you want to freeze motion, you speed that shutter speed up. If you want a more shallow depth of field, if you want every one of your pictures to look. Oh, and one other thing, let me say this about depth of field too. What is this? This is f8, and this is f8. It's talking about subject distance. Remember, we're talking about subject distance. This is at f8. And if you look at the candles, you still can read what's there. It's a little blurry. You can kind of read what's there. It's a little blurry because I'm focusing right here. This is where I'm focusing at, and that's at f8, right? And so, but if I space them out, that's at f8 too. But see how it's harder to read what's on those, because the focal plane is right here. They're getting farther away, even though it's at f8. They're getting the farther away they get, the harder it is gonna be able to read what's on those, because the focus, the plane is right here. And as you come closer, and that's another thing with like focal distance. Just remember, the further away from your focal plane, the more blurry it's gonna be. The closer it is, the more in focus till it get on, then it'll be in focus also. And that's pretty much it. We're gonna get into some hands-on. If y'all got your cameras out, y'all ready to rock and roll? Any other questions? Again, my name Timothy Rogers with TLR Video and Photography. What's up, son?
I wanted to thank everybody for coming out to City Corner.
Go ahead.
I wanted to thank everybody for coming out to City Corner 9 Part 2. Hopefully you can come to Part 3. You make it Part 3?
Yes.
All right. Hopefully you can hopefully you can come to Part 3. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.